Hello, everybody, and welcome to Noor Riyadh. My name is Tara Al. I'm an independent curator based here in Saudi, and it's a pleasure to be moderating tonight's Noor Talk as part of the Noor Riyadh public activations and learning programs. Just to give you a brief overview, Noor Riyadh is one of the major celebrations of the newly established Riyadh Art Program, which was launched in 2019 under the vision of the Crown Prince, His Royal Highness Mohammed bin Salman. It's a citywide celebration of light art that unites Saudi artists with international artists. And it comes with the mission to transform the city into a gallery without walls, aiming to nurture curiosity, creativity, and public interaction. The theme of this first edition is Under One Sky, and it alludes to the togetherness and the universal impulse to gather around light and be inspired in unison. So just a little bit of housekeeping. If you're listening to this in English and you'd like to hear it in Arabic, please visit the Riyadh Art YouTube link and select the preferred language that you'd like to hear this in. You can also interact over there. If you have any questions, you can place them in the chat, and we're going to try our best to answer them at the end of this presentation. So our topic tonight, which is surrounding immersive environments, light art, and technology, is just about that. It's about creating immersive environments with technology and with a particular focus on art that is made with light. And of course, the works that our guests have created that brought them to Riyadh. It is obviously an unusual time to be talking about public art and places of gathering, especially since most of the people around the world are in quarantine. But we here in Saudi, we're really, really lucky that the situation was handled well enough just in time for quarantine when it ended, that we were able to go out and explore Noor Riyadh. We're very lucky for that. And so for that reason, we have this opportunity to speak with our panelists about their works that is in the festival in Riyadh right now. So without further ado, I'm so happy and so excited to host this conversation with our guests. I'm just going to give a brief overview of each person speaking. The first person with us here is Anthony Rowe, and he is an installation artist and the founder of Squidsoup. So Anthony was born in Oslo. He's not only an artist, but also a designer and a researcher. He founded digital arts group Squidsoup in 1997. And the aim of this group is to create shared immersive and emotive experiences that merge the physical and the virtual world together. The work that Squidsoup has done has actually been seen by millions of people across 6 continents, amazingly, in art institutions, at events like Burning Man in the USA, which a lot of people are familiar with, Canary Wharf in the UK, Durham, Lumiere in the UK, Sydney Opera House in Australia, Salisbury Cathedral in the UK, and a lot of other places. Squidsoup also regularly work with the electronica musician Quartet, and we're going to see a little bit of that in Anthony's presentation. They create together bespoke, boundary-defying, immersive light shows for live concerts that have been done in Alexandra Palace in London in 2019, in LA, in New York, and Sydney Opera House between 2015 and 18. And Mixmag magazine called this the best live show in the world. We can't wait to host that here one day. Anthony was also an associate professor of interactive design at the Oslo School of Architecture and Design between 2009 and 2014. And this is the same institute in which he received his PhD, which was called Immersion in Mixed Reality Space. That's so cool. Squidsoup and Rowe have received numerous awards, including, amazingly, a BAFTA nomination in 2001 and an honorary mention at the Arts Electronica Awards in 2017. In a previous life, Anthony was an illustrator, a photographer, a sailor, crossing the Atlantic solo in 1988, which I'm going to ask him about later in this conversation, and currently lives in Cotswolds, UK, where also Squidsoup studio is based. So that's our first speaker. I'm so excited to speak to you, Anthony. And our next speaker is going to be Károlína Hálítek, who is an artist that it creates site-specific installations and objects and photographs and videos. And the key medium in all of Károlína's work is light. Her installations have really strong experiential and immersive characteristics, which we're going to look at today. And they often result from collaborations with architects, with precision mechanical engineers, and even with quantum physicists like Leonard Susskind and Roger Penrose. She has received fellowships from CEC ArtsLink in NYC, Academy Schloss Solitude in Germany, and A4 Art Museum in China. Carolina's work has been exhibited across Europe and USA and Asia, and now here in Riyadh. I really can't wait to talk more about that with you, Carolina. Our final speaker, which is our local voice of the evening, is Zuhair Saga. He is the head of innovation at King Abdullah Financial District Development and Management Company, which is really exciting. We can't wait for this new district to open. Zuhair and his team are guiding to develop innovative strategies in businesses and public spaces. Zuhair has actually 12 years of experience in innovation and product management with an acquired expertise that interests him specifically about public and private sectors. Consistently, he is recognized as an inspiring catalyst and result-driven creative leader here in the country. And he never tires of thinking about the next possibility for our growing nation and how to integrate these amazing technologies in our nation. So without further ado, after I've just given a brief about all of our amazing guests today, I'm not going to talk too long. Anthony, I'm going to go straight to you, to your presentation, and to ask you if you can talk a little bit about the different light installations that you're going to show us, which were shown in so many different public contexts. If you could take us through these projects and discuss how the context actually shapes the process of the creation of these works, and also how space and people drive you during the process or even after the process. Thanks, Anthony.
Cool. Thank you, Tara.
No worries.
So, Squidsoup started in 1997, and our aim then, as now, was to create immersive experiences. Over the years, we've played around with various technologies, and these days we mainly focus on the use of light, sound, space, and tech to create those experiences. So there are three main strands of development in our work, and I'll briefly introduce them to you now. This is a piece called Solar that uses collimated light to create the illusion of the sun at infinity. It consists of an array of identical boxes, sun pixels, with lenses and bright white LEDs in them. They over here in the UK, we're just coming out of winter. I suppose in Riyadh, you may not really appreciate what the sun, well, you know very well what the sun looks like. We kind of forget over here in winter. So one of the attractions of the piece is that it sort of brings uplift. As you move around, it looks like the sun is following you, moving between the boxes. It's a very natural process, and so it's not immediately apparent that there's anything odd going on. But the perspective is very natural. It mimics the eye of the sun being millions of miles away. So we use Fresnel lenses and white LEDs that mimic the color of the sun to create this feeling of warmth, even though it's sometimes quite cold, and parallel collimated light as though the light source is at infinity. The next strand of work that we create is called audio wave, and we use hundreds of orbs, each containing a Wi-Fi enabled processor, LEDs, and speaker. They emit light and sound, they can communicate with each other, and they can be choreographed from, and it's something as little as a Raspberry Pi. So we use these swarms of individual units to create bespoke immersive installations that respond to a space using light and massively spatialized sound. The sonic approach is, we think, unique. Listening to a soundscape of maybe 800 speakers, it's quite an interesting experience. And because there is no massive infrastructure behind them, we can place them anywhere. And so you can create seriously spatialized experiences in public space, in difficult to access places, and so on. And our third and probably best known strand of work is called Submergence, which is, and here is an image of the piece in Riyadh. We're obviously delighted that the piece is on show in Riyadh. Unfortunately, I'm not there myself, so I haven't actually seen this iteration of it in the flesh, but we're very pleased with the images and what we've seen. The idea of the work was to create the impression of a digital presence and movement in physical space. It's actually a representation of a virtual 3D space that is then recreated and mapped in real time within our own physical world onto the thousands of LEDs. Okay, moving on. We spent years working with VR, projection mapping, and other techniques to get beyond the screen before alighting on the humble LED cube. A beautifully simple 3D volumetric visualization system. We thought we could combine that approach with the work of Jesus Rafael Soto, who is an op artist, to create these larger scale walk-through immersive spaces. And after several years of experimentation, Submergence was the result of that. Physical space is integral to our work. Our works are large and walk through, and physical space has a big advantage in digital works over things like games, controllers, and other interfaces, because everybody knows how to navigate and control physical space. We spend our lives practicing it, and so it becomes a very intuitive interface. Backgrounding the tech, there are two aspects to this, really. There's the physical tidying up of it. Submergence is effectively a large array of suspended strands of light, but behind the scenes, this is an early version. You can see the cables and so on are fairly, well, they have been fairly all over the place. Although, you know, we have managed to tidy it up over the years. The piece has been shown 70 times, so it's become a lot cleaner as a result of that. But it's also important, I think, it's that we've tried very hard not to encourage a binary, deliberate decision-making process, because if you're presented with buttons, with physical screens, with that kind of thing, you just tend to sort of go down the route of trying to work out how something works. What is it trying to say to me? What is it, you know, what is the interface? What is the mechanics here? Rather than, how does this make me feel? What is this as a holistic experience? And so we try to get away from any kind of physical thing, buttons, no visible tech whatsoever, no screens, just light, sound, and space. So we're interested in the affective experience rather than a sort of analytic engagement where you're constantly trying to work out either the technology or the meaning of the work. It's much more of a sort of visceral experience. Yeah, our work is public art, so it's all about people. It's all about shared spaces. It's all about how you experience this work with other shared people. And this is one of the reasons we moved away from VR, was because VR is a very can be, or usually, a very lonely experience. And we've noticed a lot of different ways that people respond to our work. The first time it was shown was in an art gallery, but as soon as we started moving it outside, we found quite often that it would become much more of a party atmosphere at times, which was not originally anticipated. But it did become quite a sort of social hub. It became a magnet that would draw people in. And in more COVID-friendly times, we had some very, very busy, crowded experiences showing the work. And the other thing that the things moved on a little bit, but I said earlier on that we were looking at trying to get away from the screen as an interface, because the screen is a boundary as well as a very sort of technological experience. The first thing that people do when they come into the piece is they take out their phones, unfortunately. So it's quite hard to, you know, it's a fact of life. And the third mode of people that we have seen, and we've seen it all over the world actually, is what we've come to call a contemplative mode. So it's where people lie on the floor quite often. They zone out, even in cold spaces. They lie, disused warehouses and so on. People lie on the floor, they zone out, they become quiet. This becomes like a sort of almost trance-like experience. And they will spend, 20, 30, 40 minutes just soaking up the atmosphere of it, just sort of being transported, being immersed in the experience. So when that happens, I feel that the piece is working. I mean, I've got nothing against people having a party. I think that's great too. But if people can sort of really engage with the work and forget where they are, forget what they're doing, that's then I think our job is done. Submergence has been shown about 70 times around the world in 6 continents over the years. And each time we put it up, each time we place the piece in a new location, in a new setting, it becomes its own unique experience. I think that's because the piece is very much a dialogue with the space. It's an augmented layer. As I say, it's a virtual reality space that's placed over the physical world, but it is by necessity a dialogue. It's transparent. People can walk straight through it. People are immersed within it, but it's not separate from its own location. So, we've shown it in churches, we've shown it on water, we've shown it in public spaces, in art galleries, in festivals. This last image here was Burning Man, where we put it on a disused armored vehicle and drove it around the playa in Nevada. And so each time is a different experience. This is the final set of slides. This is very briefly. A few years ago, we got the opportunity to work with Fortet, who's a reasonably well-known electronica DJ and musician, on some of his live performances. We started quite small, and we started in the traditional way of having him on the stage with the lights behind him and the audience in front. But we started trying messing around with that, and first at the ICA in London, and then at all subsequent events, including the most recent one we did, which was at 10,000 capacity Alexandra Palace in London. We placed Fortet right in the center of the installation and the audience. The audience and the installation was all around him, but the audience was also in the installation. So these strands are hanging down in the audience in the middle of a live concert. I think it really became an experience at breaking down the boundaries between audience and performer, but also between installation art and performance, musical performance. So it was particularly the Alexandra Palace experience was amazing, and the sheer size of it was also quite striking. I think we were going to be showing in Berlin, LA, and New York as well, but unfortunately COVID has put those on hold for the moment, but we hope to be doing it at some point. I'm going to finish with a quick video of the Alexandra Palace gig. It's only about 30 seconds long, but thank you for your time.
Thank you. Beautiful. Anthony, can I just ask a question before moving on to Carolina? I didn't want to interrupt you. I noticed that about the color of every installation, of every piece, especially in the first one that you mentioned, the sun probably looks it actually looks different, right, in every location. It might be cooler in the UK or in the Northern Hemisphere. So that made me, it was a kind of more white than warm. It made me think about the use of color in all of your works, which obviously in Submerge, it's like it has a life of its own in every single location where you put it. Is color a choice that comes in response to the context, or is it part of the tech itself that it changes on site?
Well, no, it was a very deliberate choice. So the sun piece, we chose a white LED that was meant to be a Mediterranean sun. And we chose the blue of the boxes to create the sky that was also, deliberately Mediterranean blue. But as for Submergence, we did a lot of experiments playing around with different different colors and how they mix and match and what works and what doesn't. And the crucial thing to avoid is looking like a Christmas tree.
That could happen easily, I can imagine.
Yeah. then if you mix too many colors up in the same place, you just end up with something that's really quite jarring. So with Submergence, actually, we go through the whole spectrum. So at times it'll be reds and oranges, and at other times it'll be greens and blues and so on. But we only ever use a narrow spectrum at one point. So we'll go from maybe pink to orange or from purple to blue, perhaps, but not going right round the spectrum. And that works. It has been interesting, though, how it works in different spaces. With the first place we ever showed it was an art gallery in Oslo. And they had these beams across the middle of the room. When we had a sort of wash of color going through that would start at red and go through to yellow, say, and you had red in front of this beam and yellow behind the beam would look like a red beam against a yellow background. But then if everything was orange, it would be an orange-green beam against an orange background, and so it would disappear. So although the colors we choose are specific and not site-dependent, the effect that they have on the particular site also varies every time we show it. Yeah, I think that adds to the difference every time. But most of the places we've shown Submergence, we've shown pretty much exactly the same content.
They're beautiful, and we're really, really lucky to have it here in Riyadh, honestly. And hopefully when, this period is over, the concerts are back, we're going to experience your work in real time. I'm sure it's, we have to be there to see it, to feel it, to know the sensation. It's not that easy to comprehend through the screen, but I really do share, do hope that these can be shared in reality soon. Thank you, Anthony, so much.
Thanks. I was just going to say, sorry, that I think that's the same for all of the artists here, is that showing stuff in 2 dimensions on an image on a screen is nothing like the actual piece itself.
It isn't. So I urge people who are in Saudi right now to go to Riyadh to experience Submerge, and also to experience Carolina's work. We're going to talk to you, Carolina, now. Hi. Thank you for being with us. I wanted to start with a question about your work and sort of in a different perspective, because I know that, your work is also placed in public spaces, just like Squidsoup's work and Anthony's work in general, but it does have a very different effect. It does, make space for a different type of interaction, perhaps an interaction where the viewer is kind of going in themselves. Could you talk to us a little bit about that in your projects, and about how light and these beautiful installations interact with someone's experience of self in a public space?
In many ways, what Anthony said, I can relate to it strongly. It's we both create immersive installations, and my installation focus on the individual, but not only for on the one person, but other people can also join. So it's like often the space like designed for individual, but more people can be also included in a that experience, artistic experience, I would say. So the reason why I'm focusing on the individual, in a sense, is that I want my works to be very personal. And the origin of the works is from my personal experience, always I'm always asking myself about what would I like to experience. If I experience something special, then I want to share it. And sometimes the experiences I have, like kind of spiritual experiences, are so strong that I feel like, oh my dear, like I want others to feel the way I do. I want others to feel what I feel. But speaking about it doesn't make any sense. So that's why I decided to go forward with like translating the experiences into experiences. So actually the artworks itself, they are just catalysts. They are just physical spaces, but in the same time that transform the space into sensual space. So it's like you have a 3D, you have a three-dimensional object that is supported by experience. So it's 3D plus one. It's like a 4D experience, because it's all about the feeling. It's all about evoking experiences, feelings, emotions, that I want them to be contemplative. I want people to engage in contemplation, in a kind of the experience that is not like any other. So to create an experience that is special, that is particular, I need to create particular spaces, and that requires kind of purity, simplicity, monumentalism, like big scale, large scale, so people can really feel that they are included in something bigger than themselves.
I think just to kind of understand what you're talking about, I think we have a video. I'd really like people to see the video just so that we get an idea of the kind of monuments that you create. Could we go to the video? Amazing. Was shot from inside one of the pieces, right? Could you talk about one of those pieces while maybe we have the images roll up on the screen?
Sure. So that work is called Scanner Room. Mm-hmm. So as you can see, people can enter the room that is like scanning the audience. But in the same time, room is like diffused. You don't see where is the limit. You don't see the floor, you don't see the ceiling, you don't see the walls. Your only reference point is light. And actually people start to exist, start to be seen only when the light goes through them. So it is very surreal in the same time, but to me very important is that person that comes in is surprised, is unaware what's going on, and that's why he has to be more aware of himself or herself, and the sense of presence is increased. The sense of all the senses are in the kind of alert, so it's very mindful. People can be here and now, and in the same time it has this philosophical kind of sense that the work is breathing, so it's like you're receiving and letting go. It's like a breathe, it's like a life circle. But in the same time, it's very technological, as we can maybe feel today in the contemporary times, very scanned. Like, we are just checked. We are kind of scanned, like through the media, through the cell phones. We have the sense that we are observed in a way. So those are two themes that combine like this sort of them. There are many different levels that you can read the work. I think we can go forward with the next projects. This one is Cloud Square, and it was created. I created it for the Lohmeyer Sculpture Park in Missouri, and I wanted to create a work that's very inclusive, but ephemeral, so something between nature and like home, what the home is, how we treat our nature as home in the same time, and inclusive in the sense that I wanted everyone to go inside. So all the people can meet up in a square, like usually in the old cities, people were meeting in the squares. So people can meet up, and they have this transition between interior and exterior, and also the fog that comes out is like ephemeric. So there is this fine line between what's inner, what is outer. Okay, so let's forward to the next project. This one is called Field. It also it was presented in Germany in Kunstmuseum Gelsenkirchen. And as you can see, I created a field of light, and the same. You enter to kind of a natural space, a field, but it's an urban space. It's like in a city. It was presented on a terrace, on a museum terrace. So the longing for nature, the longing for having experience that is sublime, that is in a way supernatural, natural, but at the same time supernatural. That we are kind of longing in the city, where everything is planned and everything is functional. So this work field, as the other works, they not present, but they invite to fulfill that sense of sublime, that we're still very in touch with the environment, and we can ask ourselves what environment we live in. This is a very personal, individual work, and it's called Halo. I showed it in China and is in Israel, and that work actually came out from the experience I had. It was a spiritual experience, and I had the feeling that my space around me is like suddenly during like prayer, I felt that my space around me is like so clean, so pure, very light, like in terms of like weight, heavier. It was very light. I felt extremely light, extremely peaceful, and I had the sense that my body's, my spirit, my body, my whole self is extended. So I thought, wow, such a fantastic, I had such a fantastic experience, and I wanted other people to feel, to relieve the tensions, to go inside the pure space. They are surrounded by the light, that they are cared for, that they can sense the purity. So that's very individual work and very contemplative in that sense. And this work is called Terminal, and it was inspired by the stories, testimonies of people who experienced near death. So they were on the edge of life and death. And I thought, when I got to know about those experiences, I thought, wow, it's incredibly fascinating. It's all the existential topics are covered in that experience. But what people see is white light, and I got really inspired by that color that actually people see all around the world from different backgrounds, ages, that they see white light, and that's why I decided to use the white light, but usually people see the light in the end of the tunnel, and when they reach the end of the tunnel, they are all in light, like they are immersed in light in the experience. So I combined both. I have created a tunnel and also the place, the place of immersion. So that work was presented in Germany, in Stuttgart and Bremen. But what I wanted, that people from the city, they can just step in and be in another reality, and they can stay there as much as they want. They can take time. They can use this as a space, or they can use this as a passage. They can walk through, or they can sit, or they can, stay there. People were reacting very interesting. Some people were dancing. Some people were singing. Some people were laying down. As Anthony was saying, that the reactions were completely surprising, and I would never guess. I would never expect that kind of reactions. But and now I think we can show the work that I created for Noor Art Festival, which is called Beacon, and all the things I was saying previously are also embodied in that work. But Beacon is it's a work that is in a park, and you can see from really far away. You can see the light. As in Terminal, the light from the outside was closed, Here, the beacon, actually, it's very bright, and you can see it from far, far away, from outside of the park. It's like a guiding light, and that shows the journey, like a navigation. But then when you reach the point, when you reach the center, then the navigation actually goes upward, and it's like on the earthy level, on the vertical kind of spiritual level that points the sky, points heavens, points God. So as well, the fog, it's very dynamic, active, and the structure is very static, very stable. So you have both kind of earthy and spiritual together. And then the fog is like a spirit that comes up. So it has the two levels of, let's say, philosophically, of guidance and immersion and peace. I wanted people to be surrounded by the light, so they can feel cared for. They can feel peaceful, and in the same time very alive, because the fog gives a lot of action. So this work is still on until the 4th of April, so anyone can go for free and get the experience.
I'm really lucky to have actually seen this work. Thank you, Carolina, for taking us through your work. I was really lucky, as I was saying, to have seen it, and I do encourage everybody to experience it if they can. I did have a question for you, but because of time, I think I'm going to leave it for the discussion period. I'm going to say thank you so much for showing us all of this beautiful work and making us think about, public space and light in a different way, really different and unique way. Thank you for that. I'm going to hand over to now. I'm really excited to speak with Zuhair Saga. Zuhair is coming from a different perspective. You're representing the voice of Saudi right now. And honestly, I'm so jealous of you because you work in a place where you can see, your office is around a lot of these works. So I want to hear from you what you think, art can do in terms of innovation and technology, and especially in our economy right now. Like how does those two things combine in your perspective?
Well, thank you all for your great work. We can see that after the quarantine, everything is open. Now there is a message saying art can bring people together. Art is a medium where you can go and see people enjoying these pieces of art. We see life going back to Riyadh. This is really interesting to see people actually going to see dialogues about art pieces, to see people interested again to go out and see the artworks of several artists that coming to Noor Riyadh. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Zuhair. Thank you. Unfortunately, your voice is a little bit cutting, but we're going to try to follow you. I'm going to ask you a question about something that you're really interested in and also have a lot of experience in, which is artificial intelligence and algorithms and their connection to art. Could you talk a little bit about or tell us about how AI and algorithms can actually create art pieces? And after that, we'll segue into a group discussion.
So technology today is in everywhere in our lives, and with the technology that called Internet of Things or IoT, everything turns into a technology, or everything have a computing power by its own. So one of the things that actually both our artists, Anthony and Carolina, mentioned is the engagement, the customer engagement, or the people engagement with some art piece. Some of these can be captured in a way or another with an IoT technology as a data point that will actually measure the satisfaction of the people with a certain piece or a certain art. So saying that, actually, for going with that, a lot of algorithms are now being developed to actually study the rhythm of some painting for some artist or some pieces of some artist and trying to mimic this and create a new piece. This is happening actually. We saw this happening in so many places, such as the Artathon, which is the art hackathon that happened in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, where we hosted a lot of artists that developed a lot of algorithm that can actually learn by its own and create a new pieces of art.
So I wanted to, because we had a little discussion about this earlier, and you had a really interesting, you mentioned something really interesting, which is a lot of artists and people are actually concerned about this kind of technology, that, the technology might substitute artists or substitute, the way, the creative thinking. But you also answered that query. You refuted it with a really interesting comment, which I think is something that we can discuss together, which is something you said, Zuhair, is if you don't have a story behind what you're doing, you're going to lose the war against the machine. And I really like that quote specifically. And I was wondering what you think, how you think stories play a role in keeping the human element of art, so that AI doesn't kind of take over. What do stories mean to you?
So every piece of art have a story behind it. We as human are complicated creatures. We don't only look at the piece itself, we look at the story behind it. We love to hear stories. We actually, we love sometimes to hear stories through different mediums, whether it's movies, it's art piece, or it's sound, or it's lights, or etc., etc. There is a story behind every piece. Now, a computer can create a piece, but it doesn't have the necessary feelings to actually create a story behind the piece. So the more important thing now is, what's the story behind each piece? This is the things that will actually make an artist actually win against this war against the machine, where the machines cannot create a story by its own, but us human can.
That's really interesting. And you were saying earlier that it's a really challenging question. So I appreciate that you shared this challenging question. And this is a culture that really loves storytelling. I mean, it's part of our heritage. And so because of that, I'm going to ask for some stories right now, actually, if that's okay. I'm going to ask about, first of all, Anthony, I did mention, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I really do want to hear about your story of crossing the Atlantic, and also how that kind of fed into your practice.
Well, very briefly, I sailed single-handed across the Atlantic from the UK to America in it's a long time ago, 80 something or other. And it was part of a race, but nevertheless, I was single-handed. So I was on this boat on my own and didn't see anybody except for one boat that I passed in the middle of the ocean for about 26 days. It was an interesting experience, obviously. It's quite interesting spending that much time on your own. In those days, I didn't have a phone. I had a VHF thing, which had a 20-mile radius, so I couldn't speak to anybody. But I think you do get very attuned to your environment, and you get very attuned to the vehicle, the boat, and also very attuned to the weather and the natural surroundings, and also very aware that there's nothing but water for like a mile below you. And I think that feeling of space and the feeling of sort of floating on top of this enormous volume, and obviously the light at sea is quite special, and the clouds and all that, they definitely attuned my mind to the sort of elemental side of the planet. And I think it's definitely, that is a strong part of my impetus as an artist, is to create that feeling of wonder at the elements that you can experience out there.
Thank you for sharing that. I mean, we're trying to ease the tensions around machine overtaking, and I think that story is really relevant, especially with the connection to the sea and to the environment. I don't think that's something that can be processed in the same way through an artificial intelligence, or we don't know yet, and it's not happening now. So that we're lucky for that. I also wanted to ask, hear from Carolina, maybe like how nature kind of feeds into your work, and how especially light feeds into your work.
I don't have much experiences. I mean, when I was a child, I spent a lot of time in nature. But as I was growing up, unfortunately, I had less and less time to experience, to be in nature. It's like too busy, like to go even for a week, or just, it's been difficult to find the right time, go out and to spend time in nature anymore. So I feel a big longing, and I feel like it's impossible to carry on life without the nature, just in the city. It can create, I think it can create such a tension or such an unbalance that can link to some illnesses and some instability. So I feel it's very important to have that balance. I feel it myself very strongly. Also, I don't want about the VR, I'm very skeptical in a sense, because one thing is that we live in a city without the environment. Another thing is that we are all the time, connected to the digital devices, which is another thing. And that's why I also, similar to Anthony, that he moved out from VR. I deliberately didn't want to go to this in this direction, because I believe that we need a remedy for that. We need a balance. We need to balance this our digital involvement with the bodily, like physical activity that, that we really live our life in the body, in life, not only in front of the computer or in a smartphone in your hand. So I decided, especially as kind of a mission for myself, to create works that are real, that are physical, that are even, all my works have a sculptural aspect. So it's not only like a projection or some sort of a mapping, or it's actually a physical thing. It's a sculptural light installation. So I feel it's kind of a mission. But in terms of stories, I would never say, as Zuhair said, this is art. Without the story, is not art. Yes. So if you have some kind of object that doesn't have a story behind, doesn't have a message, what is this? Is it a decoration? Is it a design? How do we categorize art as art? What's the difference between any products that people create? And I think that there's the point that you bring some inner, like your personal story, and you share it with the world. As I'm saying that I shared some experiences, some my spiritual experience during a prayer, or stories of others that couldn't speak by themselves. They could express themselves in words. But I have a possibility to use other tools as like visual language. So I can tell a story in a visual language, which I consider like collaboration. It's like my work would never happen without people and without stories with other people. It would be just impossible. It's always about the interaction, about collaboration, about the experiences that were real, that happened, but they didn't happen in front of the computer, I must say. So it's very important.
Well, I'm definitely going to remember this experience, even if it happened on the computer, but maybe in a different way. But we do have some questions from the audience, unless anybody wants to add anything onto what was just said.
I was going to just add on the stories, that I think stories are absolutely vital to everything. And it's not only art, they're actually vital to being human. And I think we are so fine-tuned to storytelling that we actually apply stories. We make stories up all the time. So I think everybody that comes into my work, and I'm sure it's the same for Károlína, they will come in with their own narratives and with their own stories, and they will apply their own stories and their own experiences to it as well. Károlína's work is very abstract, and ours is abstract too. And I think, there is a story there, but I think the abstraction allows people to apply their own stories to it as well, which is, I think, really important and a fundamental part of human nature.
And I also think the abstraction allows the story to be understood in every single context. Like the language of abstract work is just, it can be experienced and understood in so many different ways. I really appreciate your works because sometimes people don't, connect with maybe abstract paintings, for example, but abstract experiences that are placed in the immersive in the environment that we're in and immerse us definitely always have an effect, So I really appreciate that. And I thank you for bridging that understanding of storytelling with art, because I think that's something really important also for us to hear. So thank you, Zahir, for mentioning that, because that's a really important point. I will read out a few questions from YouTube because we have just a few minutes left. It's difficult to choose which one, but I'll just go with the first one. Does the new generation, someone's talking about us, the millennials, experience your art, in a different way, technology-related art in a different way than others do?
I'm obviously older, so it's pretty hard to have any empirical evidence because nobody's both old and young. But obviously young people are much more familiar with technology and they're harder to impress with anything that's technological. But I think, as Károlína was alluding, they may have lost something from this overdose of technology. So, and that will absolutely affect their experience. So different, but better or worse, I have no idea.
Does anyone else have anything to say about that?
I mean, no? I say that everyone wants to take a selfie, everyone wants to take a picture, and it's like essential, in the work. So it's quite funny that people are fighting, like they're really fighting to have that picture, that they need to be pictured. And I think that older generations, they can just like go in or like just see the work and leave without the photo. It's very interesting how people are dragged into it. But in the same time, it's as Anthony said, it's a new thing that they put. Everybody's bringing own story, and then with the picture the stories flow, and you have the flow of information and shared experience. So it has a new value, the new value is added when the pictures or videos go viral.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thank you for that. Is that it's about how we use it rather than what it is or what it does. Using it with awareness, I guess. The other question is to everybody, is innovation always related to technology for you? What does it mean to be innovative? I don't know if I have a hunch that Zahir has something to say about this, but I'm not sure.
Innovation is going beyond the cutting edge. When we're talking about innovation is not only about technology. Innovation is going beyond the cutting edge of any kind of science, of findings, or any kind of problems. So this is what innovation is all about, is going beyond the cutting edge. And this is why sometimes we see the same innovation happening at some different places, but at the same time. And sometimes we actually say who's the first, but the thing is that they both know what's the cutting edge is. And once you know what's the cutting edge is, then you can go beyond that point. And this is where innovation mostly happened. It happened beyond the cutting edge of things. For example, I can tell you several examples, such as now we have 3D glasses, and we have 3D experiences in movies, but this is the cutting edge, or let's say this is the cutting edge. Now we have the 4K or 4D actually experiences where you have more than seeing things in 3D or hearing things differently. So going beyond the cutting edge is always innovation.
Thanks for that answer. I really do have a lot to say back, and I also have so many more questions. There actually are a lot of more questions, but unfortunately we're out of time. Hopefully next time we meet, we'll be in the same place, inshallah. And so now that we've reached the conclusion, honestly, this is so hard for me to end this conversation, but I've got to do it. We have come to the conclusion of our discussion today, and I really thank everybody who's given us our time. Thank you, Carolina. Thank you, Anthony. Thank you, Zuhair, for sharing your thoughts and also your beautiful works. And I hope that people listening and watching at home have gotten an interesting and dynamic perspective about art and about light and about technology from two very different and amazing thinkers, or three very different and amazing thinkers. I'd like to give special thanks to the tech team. Honestly, well done. And if you do have time, come to visit the works in Riyadh. Thanks to everybody who followed Noor Riyadh online. Please check out the website for other talks that are happening, all equally interesting. And what do I say? Stay healthy, stay united, and good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.